Welcome to Subway Sports Talk.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
All right, here we go. Subway Sports Talk. My name is Peter Kennedy, and I am your host. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in to SST on Apple Podcasts app, Spotify, and on YouTube. Joining me today, the one, the only, the big O, the big code. Ooh, the big code has a good ring to it. Cody O'Connor, what is up, dude?
What is up, man? Did I get a big O Oscar Robertson shout out?
It felt
Take
right.
us right into some NBA. Felt good to me.
It felt right. I also feel like there's more in the code nickname. Like code name.
Kid Next Door was always big.
Right? It's like too long, but there's something
Agent
else
Cody
there.
Banks was always a hit, as a kid, especially when that came out. Shout out Frankie Muniz. Took Cody's to the next level, really.
There's got to be something with like coding as far as like coding programs and algorithms and things of that nature. Like, I don't know, the betting code, something like that.
Crack the code? I don't know. Hopefully we could crack the code at some point.
The gambler's code? I don't know. There's something like that. You are cracking the gambler's code so far this season. What are you, 26 and 19? Golly, I'm 19, 25, and 1. So how are you doing? Pretty damn good, Cody. You're crushing it in the NFL picks. So is Mark Shanlugan, who's on an absolute heater. Pat Boyle hanging at one game above 500. And yours truly, the only one under 500. But we're coming back hard in Week 16 this week. I can feel it now, Cody. I can feel it now. But that's not what we're here to talk about just yet. We do plan to hit on some NFL stuff later and perhaps a Mets wish list and a Yankees wish list at the end of this very podcast as the free agents still hang around and we wait for more of that. But with all the Juan Soto conversations, with all the NFL that's in our face right now, there's been a new conversation brewing that has much to do about the NBA and the state of the NBA. Where are they at with TV ratings? Where are they at with stars in this league? The product on the court, why people are watching, why people are not watching. This conversation has become a big one. It kind of started a few weeks ago as the ratings were starting to come out for some of the big stuff. And obviously some people are aware it's still up against football season and college football. But also the percentages that they're down are a little bit more glaring than perhaps we would have guessed. So this is becoming a real conversation. This is becoming something that we kind of have to dive into. I know I got hella takes. Cody, when did this hit your forefront? I don't want to hear your take yet, but when did this become, something that you were seeing online and then something that you actually were like, all right, let me start thinking about this?
It started during this season for sure. It wasn't anything before this season, off season, finals last year. I didn't see much of this. Probably within the last month, and then it just kept coming, like things kind of come and you're like, all right, this too shall pass, like everything. And this one really stuck around and it just keeps coming and coming, where it's like, all right, this conversation's, I guess, really going to happen. And the ratings are showing what they are. So I would say within the last month, but it just keeps ramping up to more and more shows. And like I said, I listened to Bill Simmons today, and it was the start of his show, and I know you typically listen, you haven't yet. But yeah, it's been the past couple of weeks. It's starting to heat up even more.
Yeah, I'm glad that I haven't listened to it yet. You and I noted Bill Simmons fans of the podcast. So, obviously if we both listen to that could lead us in the same direction. But, we're two people who tend to see things in a similar light. We obviously disagree on certain stuff or push back on certain things here and there, but we obviously have some sort of general vision when we look at sports, and it shows the way we do these podcasts. And I hope that we don't agree on everything here. This is one of these conversations that I kind of feel pretty passionately about, so I'm going to dive into it in a second. But this is something that's now hitting the ether of non-NBA fans, and that's how these things go, right? So I'm going to start here. The NBA problem with ratings and the atmosphere around the game right now has a number of factors. To me, and we're going to go into those specific factors, but to me, the main factors are not what people think they are. There's a lot to do with people talking about the three-pointers and the physicality and the lack of defense and the refereeing. And then you get into the timeouts at the end of a game and free throws And it starts to go to a whole product-based conversation. That's a conversation I like to have because I do appreciate the NBA. Then there's the other side of the conversation that comes into it about the people in the league. And if they got too politicized or they are now acting in such a way that is turning people away from the product, that's another part of the conversation. The other part of it is that if people just care about basketball and the players in it at all, is there star power? Those are kind of the three big things that are being talked about. And I'm going to raise one more that I'm going to end up sticking my flag in a little bit more than most are, because I think it's the most important one. Today's day and age, my biggest concern, Cody, with the NBA right now is that it's incredibly easy to follow this league without watching it. I don't think it has to do with three-pointers. I don't think it has to do with the defense or lack thereof. I don't think it has to do with timeouts. Social media and YouTube and podcast have made it incredibly easy to follow a league without watching a game. You could be the most casual of casual NBA fans, and I don't mean casual in a negative light. I mean it in the light that it's supposed to be, that you're not fully locked in, but you like it enough to know what's going on. You could feel like you know what the stars are doing. You could feel like you know which teams are playing well and which teams are being disappointing. And you could not have turned on one National League game or nationally televised game the entire season. You could float in and out of your favorite team, which in this case in New York, it's mostly the New York Knicks, and maybe watch, let's say, 5 of their 26 games so far this year. And you could feel like you know what's going on with LeBron, Steph, Durant, the Knicks, the Sixers, who else? Jokic, Wembanyama, OKC, and you know who's playing well, who's playing bad, who's in the top of the rankings, who's at the bottom, and everything in between without turning on more than 5 games in a season. To me, that is the biggest crux of this issue. There's a lot more going into it, of course, and stuff that I want to talk about because there are some things that I vehemently do not understand and do not agree with. But Cody, with my breakout, those couple things, plus the social media and YouTube and podcast world that we live in, is there any one thing that jumps out to you as a part of this conversation?
Well, the last part, it's the most recent that I heard too, but it's definitely there that you scroll TikTok, you scroll Instagram, and you've got just quick 15-second videos, and there's like an attention span issue, I think, that goes on. I think both of us working with kids probably could vouch to some of that. And I'm not by any means outside of that. I have the same issue. But you could also go onto YouTube and watch a 9-minute clip, and that highlight is essentially telling you the story of the game. So there's a 9-minute viewing of, I watched the entire game. I know exactly what happened there. And then there's the fact that, Embiid hasn't played because that's everywhere. And LeBron stepped away and now he's back. And how's it going in Golden State with Steph? And KD's been injured and all that stuff. But that's all obviously there. Bill Simmons did bring up too the political aspect of it. He's like, I'm not going to touch that. I guess I kind of feel similar. I think we're moving past some of that, but back when that was like a bigger conversation point, it might have turned people off, just like it did in baseball, just like it did in football. I think that happened somewhat everywhere, and people kind of came back to it. The one thing to me, though, as far as the actual product, like I'll say, you and I watch a ton of NBA, and the end of games is so often brutal. It's not the first time I've said this, but the end of games can be 4 minutes of game time taking literally 40 minutes. And that's not even like being outlandish. That's what happens. I think part of that for me watching can ruin the product, where it's like, all right, I'm probably still going to watch. And I'm built different, right, Pete? I'm a little different guy, but a lot of people I think probably get turned off a little by that. And I don't blame them. It can be, again, it's like it takes away from what you're there to watch. I think sometimes that stuff kind of bothers me, at least. So this whole ratings conversation is interesting because, as you mentioned, there's many different angles to attack it and what people are seeing and thinking of. But as far as I'm concerned, product wise, that's the one thing where I'm like, oh God, this is the league I defend, and it can be hard to watch.
Yeah, and I think those are all such important parts to bring up to this. And this is where I start to get frustrated because I don't think enough people out there who are complaining about this are watching enough to have a great opinion on it. And that could be me on my NBA League Pass high horse, knowing that I watched the entirety of a Nuggets Kings game last week that had lead changes like crazy and had star players at the peak of its powers going back and forth with Nikola Jokic and De'Aaron Fox, who's playing a great season so far this year, and watched a great game on like a Wednesday night or whatever it was. That's me. That's what I'm doing. I know you're doing the same thing a lot. There are a lot of people out there who are talking smack about this league, Cody, who I don't believe are watching the games. And I'm not trying to say like, oh, you don't get ball. Like, I think you do get ball. I think if you put a little bit more time into it, and I'm not expecting you to, you would enjoy it at a different level, right? Like, I had friends in my group chat talking about this throughout the week, and it's been coming up a lot. And I'm like, you guys are complaining about something because you're sending around clips that are getting sent on the internet of like the Charlotte Hornets. And I'm sorry, take any NFL team in the bottom third of the league and you can put together a 45-minute clip of them being horrible and a disaster. And frankly, the way we criticize the NBA this season and the past couple seasons is not how we are criticizing the NFL. And I don't think the NFL deserves it because they're clearly crushing it. But part of this conversation too is like, oh, the ratings are down. The ratings are down. It's an easy chance for people to dunk on a league that they're not rooting for. And that's part of the problem too. So I'm not really criticizing people for dunking on the league. I'm criticizing them for how they're dunking on the league. Like, I'm not begging you to be an NBA fan. I'm begging you to have a nuanced opinion here. And to me, this idea that a politicization of the players is turning you away, I think that's BS because I haven't heard a player be political since the bubble season, honestly. Like, I watch as much NBA media as you possibly can. And like, there's no politicization. I can't even say that word right now of these players right now. Haven't heard it. Even in the midst of this election, have you heard it? Maybe Steve Kerr said something here or there. Like, if you're getting turned away from the NBA because of like a few people saying something that you don't like about politics, I don't really get it because there's people in every league doing the same thing, right? So that to me is not a valid argument. But that's besides the point, and we don't really need to sit on that one very much. Moving forward with it, people talk about this a ton, Cody, because we'll get to the end of the game stuff because I do agree with you on that front. People talk about, oh, this league is so soft. No one like hates each other. There's no rivals anymore. These guys just change teams. They're not role models. They're not loyal. These things come up. And to that, I really don't think people understand where this league has been in the past, right? There's so much nostalgia that goes into it, especially with people in our age range from like that late 20s to the young 40s. We think of the mid 2000s as this peak era, and it wasn't. Right? There were loads of issues with the league in 2000s until LeBron James actually made a finals or then furthermore moved to Miami. The league was in flux, and there was corruption that brought Pau Gasol to Los Angeles to lead to that second Kobe run too. And Kobe, who gets memorialized in a beautiful light 95% of the time, which 95% of it he deserves, he had a really weird 2000s too. And Allen Iverson, we loved him. A lot of people loved him. A lot of people hated him. So I think there's this memorialization of a league in the 2000s that people love to talk about. But when we were in it, the conversation we're having right now about ratings problems, when ratings were actually more important than they are now, like those happened. They happened when MJ retired. This came way through the league right again. What's going on with the NBA? Are they screwed? Oh my God. They got to put a dress code. They got to do this. They got to do that. All these things were happening. We forget about it because AI has sick highlights. Tracy McGrady has sick highlights. Vince Carter could dunk the crap out of the basketball. Kobe is a highlight maniac, a highlight machine, right? So we easily forget about the negatives of every other part of the league. I saw a clip of Gilbert Arenas going around again. It's not recent. It's from a few weeks ago, but it's been making the rounds again, talking about, oh, you got teams shooting 45, 48, 51 threes a game, and yet they're still scoring 110, 115 points, the same thing that they've been scoring. When you look back on the league right now and you see the highest point totals of all time, you're going to find teams from the late 70s, the 80s, and the early 90s. You know why? Because their pace was out of control. Their pace was as fast as ever. So if you go to the highest paced teams of all times, you're seeing the Nuggets in 1990, the Nuggets in 82, Spurs in 77, Lakers in 74, Braves in 74, Suns in 78. Go into the 70s again, the 80s again, the early 90s again. There's not a team in the 2000s, let alone the 2020s, in the top 25 of pace. Okay, so when you see the point totals that are present right now in 2024, and they're not even as high as they were then, it's because they didn't play defense either. And these clips that people memorialize yet again of hard-nosed physical defense from the 90s when the games were 88 to freaking 92, those were far and few between. They're just the highlights. People our age, Cody, we're too young to remember that in real life. When you're if you're 30 years old right now, you don't remember that. Okay? And I'm sorry, if you think the game would be better with clotheslines going to the lane, you're wrong too. Because what you want to see is stars at the peak of their powers doing the most impressive athletic stuff that they can do. And I think athleticism and skill is at a peak in this league right now. So the idea that it's too sloppy, there's no defense, there's no physicality, it's all threes. If it's not your favorite style of basketball, sure. But don't act like there's been amazing styles of basketball all throughout the history. So my point might just be, you might just not be an NBA fan. It's nothing to do with 2024. And I got plenty of more stuff to go with, but I want to let you comment on that first.
I think you nail it in the sense of it's people who were rooting against the league anyway, who probably weren't watching and now are like, see, I told you. And they've probably been on that train forever and they just didn't want to see it succeed. But when you do watch, you're 100% right in where the skill level is, like 8th and 9th guys that come off the bench and what they're able to do. And there's actually a little more physicality being allowed in the league this year. It doesn't always seem that way, but they are letting them play more. They made that emphasis last year. If it were my way, they'd go over to the FIBA rules, which I've talked about. But Bill Simmons also brought this up, and I'm glad you didn't listen, because he talked about how in the 2000s it wasn't all the glamour that we talk about it like now. There were exactly what you said, those lulls in time between when Jordan retired and when the Lakers Shaq and Kobe got together, and then a lull in time until LeBron really took over. There's those couple years where the Pistons were great and all that jazz, and that wasn't like peak NBA stuff either. So what he was saying was essentially this happens every, 10 years or so, 10, 15 years, essentially. This type of things happen where they say this league is in trouble, the ratings are down, and then somebody else emerges and a superstar arises and it gets saved or whatnot. And the fact of the matter is we've had the same 3 to 5 guys that we've been looking at to carry the league, and they're American-born players, LeBron, Steph, KD, Westbrook, Harden, whoever you like to name. Those are the guys that have been carrying the league, and they're kind of still somewhat getting force-fed. And I think people are a little past that, where they're saying, oh, great, another LeBron Lakers primetime game. There might be enough people out there that say, well, how come I can't watch, the Knicks play the Celtics, or even the Cavs play the Thunder, or the Mavericks? Like the Mavericks and the Thunder played a game, a cup game. There's no marketing for that. Those are two teams that are on a collision course for a real rivalry. You want rivalry, NBA? There it is. Young teams, young superstars. Trajectory is only up. Played each other in the playoffs last year in a hell of a series, on a pathway to probably be the 2 best teams in the West this year, at least looking at it right now. And there's nothing for it. There's no conversation. There's no hype. There's no lead up. That was supposed to be your cup game. They could do a better job marketing these guys, but it's not like the stardom isn't there. It's not like the skill isn't there. I mean, guys do stuff nightly that is like, raise your eyebrows, holy crap, did he really just do that? Pretty much nightly you see that stuff. So it's not that. I think you're right in the sense of you didn't want to watch it anyway. So now you're just kind of watching the world burn, the NBA burn, and you're laughing in the background. But it's cool if it's not your thing. But I don't know if it ever was, or if you ever wanted it to be.
Yeah, and to go further with that on the LeBron, Curry, and Durant front, I think what's happening right now is they're dealing with the post LeBron, Curry, Durant lull before they left, right? So they're dealing with, how are we going to market this league without LeBron when he's still on the Lakers? So they're trying to push the Lakers down people's throats when 95% of people know that they're not serious contenders. They're trying to push Kevin Durant, who's had some injuries this year, and Steph Curry down our throats when we know they're not serious contenders. But every time a superstar, the MJs, the Shaq and Kobe's, the Magic Birds, every time that these eras end, typically there is a major lull. And when I say major, I mean like legitimately 2 to 3, sometimes 4 or 5 years in between those moments, right? So this is not new. to the league. This is something that happens. And the NBA right now is trying to figure out how to balance marketing the SGAs and the Lukas and the Jokic's when they're still knowing that their biggest ticket is still LeBron James, Steph Curry, and Kevin Durant. I'm just using those guys as blanket examples there. But that's a real problem that they're going to have to work with here. But another thing that, again, I think people are hypocritical with, not on purpose, Cody. I don't think they're lying on purpose, but this goes across all sports. This is not exclusive to the NBA. A constant argument that I hear about the NFL, NFL almost doesn't count because it's so uniquely king right now, despite a bunch of their trash product that they put out on Sundays. We'll get there later probably. But the MLB, the NBA, college football, college basketball, every other major sports league, people say, oh man, it sucks when you have the same teams every year. We know in the NBA, it's going to be the Cavs and the Warriors. Like, who even cares about all this? That was the peak of the NBA in the last 15 years when we knew there was a collision course of the Cavs and the Warriors. It was peak, and you can't argue against it, right? If you want to go back to find the last peak, it was when you knew it was the Lakers and the Spurs. They're going to clash in the playoffs, and the Lakers are going to be in the finals. Who they're going up against, I don't know. And part of the problem was the East was so weak in that moment. But besides the point, people act like they love a Cinderella story. People want to see March Madness and see a 16 beat a 1 seed. I don't, because I know what really drives the forces of these leagues, and it's great teams and great players on collision courses in the playoffs. I mean, say what you want about Alabama and how they get preferential treatment and whatever. When Alabama's in a playoff, it's bigger. It means more. It feels bigger. When you have Duke in a Final Four, it's bigger. It means more, and everybody knows it. Everyone wants to root for the Cinderella, root for the underdog. They try to praise baseball, praise football, praise basketball when you have other teams finding their way into a championship and winning it. But guess what? The masses don't care. The masses want to see the best. And guess what? The league would be better off if Giannis and Jokic played each other in the finals for the past 3 years. It would be. Because this whole idea of, oh, isn't it so great to have parity, to see a new team in the finals every year? That's not how America works. It's never been. All these leagues are better when you have the same teams for multiple years with the same stars shining in the biggest moments. The same thing on college level, the same thing on the pro level. You want to see a 12 seed mid-major make the finals? Knock yourselves out. The country doesn't. They might say they do, but they don't. And it's something I passionately agree with because people want to believe in this stuff. But the numbers, the proof inside the pudding is telling us every single time a season ends is that it's bigger with the bigger teams and it's better with the same stars making appearances over and over again.
You don't think people wanted to see the Jeff Teague, Al Horford, Kyle Korver Hawks in the NBA Finals that year? I disagree. That was a great starting five. They were such an excellent regular season team. I think everyone wanted to watch that.
And here's the thing about that exact point. Me and you would be the ones who are actually excited about it. And I'm arguing against it, right? Like, I would love to see a new team win a championship. But right now, do I want to see the Celtics go win another championship right now? No, but guess what the NBA needs is the Celtics to be in 3 championships in a row. Because now Jason Tatum, who gets all this crap still, even though he won a championship and is an incredible player, he's not good enough, though, for some people, right? If he makes it to 2 more finals in a row, guess who's a mini dynasty on their way to being a dynasty and now sparking the buzz in the NBA of who's going to take down the Celtics? They've won 2 out of 3 championships. They've been in 3 in a row. That's enormous for the league. I don't want to see it. I'd much rather watch, obviously I'm going to keep the Knicks out of it because they're, my favorite team. I'd much rather watch an upstart, young and upcoming team make a crazy run with buzzer beaters and get to the finals. But guess what? The masses won't. Like, they'll tell you that they will want that, and the numbers will prove otherwise every single time.
They'll watch it for the hate, like a Celtics team goes on a run and now you're watching each playoff series in hopes that they lose. And the more that they win, the more that you're watching and you're hate watching maybe, but that's why you're watching. It's because that team, the MLB this year was probably as happy as they could have possibly been getting a Dodgers-Yankees World Series. I don't know the ratings. I can only imagine it's up high.
They were up.
It has to be, right? And I've thought about this too with this conversation. I don't know if there's any correlation, but I've thought about the fact that I feel like the MLB is becoming more popular again. That like conversations are more like people are more intrigued by MLB free agency and what their team is doing. And people I was talking with a lot of people about just the playoffs. Maybe it's because I was finally involved in it, but it feels like the MLB popularity is growing. And I wonder if it's
It
like
does.
you always stick with the NFL, right? And then it's like you only have room for one more. And as the NBA starts to drop in your life, the MLB maybe increases. And I wonder if there's any correlation for that.
100%. And guess what? Juan Soto, if he's a free agent after playing a year for the San Diego Padres, is not getting $650 million. He's getting that because he just played in a World Series for the New York Yankees against the Los Angeles Dodgers. He still would have been a massive free agent. He still might have beaten Ohtani, but this conversation, the chaos, all the to-do about Juan Soto signing with the New York Mets is absolutely bigger
Juan
because
Soto's a Met?
Oh, you didn't hear?
No way.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I can't believe I'm breaking this to you right now.
That is really exciting news. For
Yeah,
how much?
dude, you're going to be pumped, by the way. It's for 15 years, a lot of money, but it's okay. It's going to be great. But
I haven't been on since. I haven't even gotten to explain my excitement over that.
We'll have to touch that later.
Yeah.
But the MLB is cooking right now, right? There's actually a hot stove. I've been making fun of the MLB hot stove for years because I've called it the lukewarm stove because it's been like a slow and low, like it's not even boiling ever in
it's
MLB.
A slow cooker.
It's a slow cooker, bro. It's the crock pot. It's the MLB off season.
Just keep it hot. On warm.
Yeah, and it's hot this year. And maybe it's because we're in New York, it's extra hot this year. It's hot. And you have to attribute some of that to the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Mets and the Phillies and these teams being the most marketable teams with marketable stars playing good baseball at the end of the year. It absolutely matters. And again, back to the NBA side of it all, if you had your best players in championships multiple years in a row, which we haven't had a repeat winner since the Warriors in the 2010s, right? So that's that. We haven't had repeat finals appearances since
the Warriors.
Since the Warriors in the 2010s, right? The Bucks didn't make two in a row. The Celtics didn't make two in a row.
They were going. Yeah, they won in 2015. They won in 16. They lost.
But then they were in it four in a row. But exactly though.
KD.
I remember it was right when we were finishing college, Cody. People were eating up the Warriors and Cavs conversation. A lot of the conversation did consist, because I'm going to be fair here, of, oh my God, here we go again. It's LeBron and the Warriors. Of course it's Steph and LeBron. Of course it is. But if you want to complain about ratings now, then your argument last time doesn't make sense. So one of your arguments is wrong, right? So right now, through this weekend, the NBA ratings on ABC, ESPN, and TNT are down 19% from last year. That's a pretty huge decline. Like, that's not a small number. If it was 5%, you go, okay, whatever. 19% is pretty big, especially with, and this is going to be ratings talk for a second here, but ratings are supposed to be getting bigger right now across all things because they're finally counting over the top stuff. So like some of the streaming apps are now counting. Some of the non-cable box stuff is supposed to be counting. It's supposed to make everything go up. So that's why it's even more concerning for anybody who's like a ratings nerd out there. But if you're arguing that the ratings are down right now, but you also made the same argument that the NBA in the 2010s was just LeBron and Steph and who cares, we know how it's going to end, then one of your arguments is invalid. And my point is, this one is invalid because you're not understanding, or I should say the last one, the one from the 2010s is invalid because that's what gets people going. The NBA doesn't have a 3-point problem, and maybe it does a little bit. We can get into that. It doesn't have a physicality problem. It definitely doesn't have a talent and skill problem. It has a powerhouse problem. The Celtics have a chance to be that powerhouse. The Thunder have a chance to be that powerhouse. Bill Simmons always talks about who's the next true superstar that's going to carry the torch of this league. Could it be Jason Tatum? I don't know. Could it be SGA? I don't know. Jokic doesn't seem like he wants to do it. Luka is up in the air if he can even do it or not at the biggest stage. He got damn close last year. But I'm telling you right now, the NBA is going to need one of those teams to be a consistent final appearance team and win multiple championships. That's the ticket to get this back to where it needs to get the conversation sparking at a way where you can get debate about the games and the teams and not the ratings and the product of play.
Yeah, if you have, like, I don't think it has to be only two teams either, and I don't think that's what you're saying, but it doesn't have to be just the same finals matchup. I think what made those years so great as well was, I mean, in the East, you kind of saw the run throughs, but it was the Spurs were still in kind of on the tail end, but they were still very much a very formative opponent. I mean, they were a 67 win team in 2016. They were the 2 seed because the Warriors were the 73 win Warriors, but there were the Spurs, there was the Thunder. You had the grit and grind Grizzlies, which were always tough. You had the Chris Paul Clippers, like almost
the Rockets with Harden.
The Rockets starting off with Harden, and obviously, you know, what they progressed into. There was so much around the West, and the East didn't have it quite as much, mostly because LeBron just walked through it. But you have an opportunity now for, in the West, again, I talked about SGA and OKC. You talk about Luka and Dallas. You talk about Jokic and Denver. You could have a 3-headed race again, and potentially some of these young teams coming through. Wembanyama's not even talked about just yet. In the East, could the Knicks be that team that pushes Boston? Because I think that's what really, I mean, truly, like, if you're seeing a conference final that's the same 2 type teams, 2 or 3 team rotation over like a 5-year period, I think that starts to get it ramped up too. Like, even before the finals, there's that opportunity for these teams to keep pushing one another into that. But you're absolutely right. It's not a skill thing. It's not that they're not good enough. These superstars are, dude, they're so sick. Like, you watch night, I mean, seriously, like the stuff that I get to watch SGA do on a nightly basis, I my jaw drops almost once a night, if not more. And then you've got some of these other guys doing stuff too. They have all those things, but can they market them better? And I wonder if a lot of these stars, Giannis included, which I don't know how we've gone this far without mentioning him, a lot of these guys aren't American based or American, and I don't know, American guys. I don't know what I'm trying to say there.
International.
They're international players. Yeah. They're not, Team USA guys. And so I wonder if that has anything to do with it, because there's a legit argument that the top 4, I mean, not even an argument, the top 4 players in the NBA are not from America. They don't play for Team USA. They are Luka, Nikola Jokic, Giannis, and SGA. I think those are the consensus top 4. Maybe not, but the SGA is Canadian. That's the closest thing. So none of them being American, does that have anything to do with how they can market these guys?
It's part of it is going to be the willingness of those guys to be marketed, right? Like, Jokic clearly has no interest in it. Giannis has interest in it. And if Giannis didn't get hurt in the playoffs 2 years in a row, I think that helps the league greatly, because I think he was crossing that threshold of being like, all right, this is the bona fide number 1 player in the league. He has a title. He has 2 MVPs. Now let's see him defend it and keep pushing this team forward. But he got hurt at the worst times. Like, Giannis played 73 games last year, right? This is another thing that we haven't even mentioned yet, right? Load management, another one of these key topics that people hit on when they criticize the NBA. And to that, I say, you're not looking close enough. You're not paying attention enough. You're just hearing people say these words and not understanding what it really means, right? So, Cody, last year in the 23-24 season, out of the top 20 scorers in the NBA, you have Joel Embiid, who was injured for a lot of the season. He only played 39 games. Donovan Mitchell had an injury. He only played 55. And Trae Young had an injury, only played 54. Other than that, we're talking about the Luka, Giannis, SGA, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Jason Tatum, Donovan Mitchell, De'Aaron Fox, Steph Curry, Nikola Jokic, Anthony Edwards, LeBron James, like Anthony Davis, Dame Lillard. These are the cream of the crop, stars who have even been around for the most part outside of a few of them. They were playing 70, 73, 75, 77, 75, 68, 74, 74, 79, 79. What do you want? If they don't play 82, they're load managing? Like, that, it's impossible, because now the MLB's hot again, right? There's like 10 guys in the league who play more than 155 games. 10, maybe, right? This is the equivalent of that. You got Brunson playing 77. Jokic played 79. And Edwards, 79 games. LeBron James last year played 71 games. Like, load management's not the issue, man.
Yeah, are people saying that? I haven't even seen the words load management. Like, they've done a really good job with however they did this. I haven't heard about it. I haven't seen it. It's not an issue. except for in Philadelphia. Outside of that, I don't think anyone else does load management.
No, I mean, listen, are there some guys like Kevin Durant now, who Kevin Durant's 36 years old? He's been dealing with some injuries anyway. Like, does he need to play 82 to suffice the
For
appetite of a
for the
casual
Suns to
NBA
be
plan?
competitive, he does, but not from
Yeah.
not for any other reason.
But you know what I'm saying? And I haven't heard the load management argument a ton, but it does come up enough where it's like, oh, the stars don't even care. They
I
don't
think
even
you're
play every
telling on
day.
yourself if you say load management right now. I think you're really telling on yourself. It's not in any way a factor right now. It's
I,
not.
I completely agree. So I just wanted to make that point clear. So let's talk about the stuff that I think could be a factor where the arguments are real, because I don't want to seem like, and I probably do, so I don't really care, but I don't want to seem like I'm fully just exonerating the NBA, that they're flawless right now. I
They're
think I've
not.
pointed out a few things that need to happen for this league to hit the right stride again. But let's talk about two things. First things first, the 3-pointers, Cody.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the 3-pointers and the defense are hand in hand. So if the conversation crosses over, I don't care. The 3-point totals are obviously hitting all-time highs. We're seeing people take more and more threes, and we're seeing a percentage that's pretty similar to what it's kind of always been, and that's due to a number of factors. Do you think that the 3-pointers is a massive issue for the NBA right now?
No, not overall. Where I get frustrated watching, because I like to watch good basketball, right? I can't stand watching like a 2-on-1 fast break where the guy without the ball just flanks out to the 3-point line and he's like, oh, I'm going to take a wide open three. That drives me crazy because I think it's just idiotic. But as far as the emphasis on shooting the three ball, like you watch a game like last night, right? OKC, I mean, literally built a house of bricks, and that can suck to watch, but it's very few and far between that it looks that way. So, when they're not hitting it, it can look bad, but I don't think there's an overall problem with the emphasis on the three ball. And I'm not an analytics guy, but it's essentially like if you watched 80s and 90s clips, say, because we didn't watch that basketball, it's like, hey, you're just going to take 2 steps further backwards and the point shot will be worth 1 extra point. And that's the difference right now in how we're playing. They would still drive and dish. That hasn't changed. Driving and getting into the middle of the defense and dishing out for either a guy to pump and go or just take that shot, that's never changed. It hasn't. They just stepped back a couple steps because it's worth more points. So, no, I don't think there's a 3-point issue personally. I just get bothered again by the fast break three. Kind of drives me up a wall, but I feel like Jeff Van Gundy saying that.
Well, Van Gundy, I think we miss him on the broadcast.
I miss him a lot. That's actually number one. I miss him more than anything. That bothered me.
Van Gundy did a beautiful job of being appreciative of the product while criticizing the product. And I think that's something that more people can do. And we do that in football, right? Like we can watch a football game and say this play caller sucks, this quarterback sucks, this defense abysmal, but we're just criticizing and we're hoping for the best and watching every second. With the NBA, people aren't particularly watching because the ratings are showing us that they're not watching, and they're complaining like they are watching, like they're Monday morning quarterbacking. And that's what bothers me, right? People talk about the other eras of the game and the fluidity of some of the players that we grew up watching and the bigs playing a different role. Oh, you're just making the 7-footers go out and shoot. That's something that people are saying. That is now directly impacting the defensive side of this whole conversation too. So people are trying to say that the NBA today doesn't play any defense. That I disagree with too. If you want to go show me Charlotte Hornets highlights and say that they suck at defense, I'm going to agree. They suck at defense. But it is incredibly harder to defend in today's NBA than it ever has been. I think the athletes are better defenders today than they ever have been because they are now tasked to defend so much more space. Like some of these guys that we grew up watching, they couldn't exist in today's game. We're seeing guys who are good players right now in the league. They can't even find time to play in the fourth quarter because they're getting thrown out of the court because they can't do anything positive, right? So I think the threes and the defense are married in a way. The number of threes don't bother me. The type of threes do sometimes bother me. And when you see those few minute spans of like, oh my God, it looks like the ball is just bouncing off the rim, rebound three, bounce off the rim, long rebound, fast break three. Those are ugly moments. But if you're going to judge the entire season and entire sport on some of those ugly moments, I think you're missing a lot of positivity. And again, the totals of threes are also giving you incredible shot makers taking incredible threes and making them. So it's very much a catch-22. It's like if you grew up on Allen Iverson hitting incredible fadeaways from the corner, step back from 18 foot instead of step backs from 23 feet. Yeah, maybe you loved Allen Iverson. There are players doing similar things with similar percentages from a different spot on the floor is what it comes down to. And it's creating a whole new set of challenges for defenses to guard these people, right? Like Porzingis in 1998 would have been just like flabbergasting people of what he does.
They would have thrown stones at him.
He would have been stoned by the NBA. That is like the standard now for every team to have a big man who can extend the floor right now. It's changed the entire math of it all, and that's why the 3-point argument is a tough one to have without having the defense argument too. So my question now, there's ideas of like, all right, do you move the 3-point line back to make it a little bit less frequent? Do you take away the corner three? Are these any ideas that would excite you at all or think worth exploring?
If you move the 3-point line back, that's at least reasonable. Taking away the corner three, like, what's next? The golden batter or something? I mean, those are like fantasy land things. That'll never happen. I can't see that.
So you're not opposed to the moving of the line.
Move it back like a foot or two. I could see that being like, hey, we're trying something, but taking away, PJ Tucker's career, essentially, I don't think that's very fair.
Poor PJ Tucker, man. I think he's still trying to hold on. Is he still with the Clippers? I don't even know.
He's got to be playing in I don't know, Shanghai or something. He's playing basketball somewhere.
He's 40.
Maybe like your local
sneakers.
YMCA, just
shout out PJ
setting
Tucker.
screens and boxing out, and
yeah,
he's good basketball. A guy you hated to have to play against. I'll say that.
Yeah. So I mean, listen, we're starting to get through all the different sides of this conversation, and to me, at the crux of it, if you are out here being critical of the NBA today, I ask you first how many games you're watching, because I think that matters, right? Because if you're not watching any games and you're just taking what you're hearing online or clips you're seeing online, then you're hating from outside the club. That's number one. And I'm not saying you need to watch a ton, but let's try watching some of the good teams. Let's try watching the Oklahoma City Thunder. Let's try watching the Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Because at the end of the day, what is the biggest mark towards good teams is still ball movement, right? And I think that's something that people aren't seeing if they're not really watching. You might get frustrated at the James Harden of 2019, 2020 range where he's dribble, shoot. Dribble, drive, pass, shoot. That could be frustrating. I get it. It is what it is. But the best teams still to this day are absolutely built on ball movement. Absolutely. Like SGA is probably the most prolific ISO shooter or ISO scorer in the league right now. And the Oklahoma City Thunder still push that pillow all over the court. Like you can't watch them and not enjoy what you're seeing, in my opinion. And you're a Thunder fan. You watch them more than me. Like, do you think there are still plenty of teams that play a brand of basketball that you enjoy?
Oh, yeah. The NBA, it's funny that it's in this spot, and I think there's a part for me that's biased where it's like my favorite team is a more than contender. I mean, they're going to win 60 games-ish, I think. I've got them over 56 and a half. They're a nightly product that I just love watching, but I've watched them play Houston now a couple times, and like that's a really young, athletic, and fun team. The Atlanta Hawks are actually a fun watch right now with the way that Trae Young is playing, the way he's facilitating. He's still takes a lot of those threes, but he's also...
Those are fighting words in New York, by the way.
Well, he's at 12 assists a game, and I know if you just appreciate basketball, like to its core, a lot of New York Knicks fans are also just diehard hoops fans. And as much as you may hate on Trae Young, when you peel it back and just say just watching good basketball, it's hard to say he's not playing that product. Giannis and watching the Bucks last night, and it's funny you mentioned the big men because for just a second I just like watched Brook Lopez take a step back three, and I was like, this guy is literally huge. Like, he shouldn't. He's huge, dude. He's so big. Like, how is he doing that?
And he used to be a post bucket back in the day.
He was an offensive juggernaut. He really was with Brooklyn.
Do you miss post ups? Do you miss the post ups from some of these guys?
I miss knowing that I could take Steven Adams' first basket and get a look every single game, because he was going to win the tip. It would go back to Russ. He'd get in the post. You could not get in front of him. And he's taken 2 very slow moves. He developed a touch. Might not fall, but I knew early on Steven Adams was getting a touch. And no, I don't fully miss that. And I think that, again, like I'm going to revert back to my team, but you guys got to watch this with Hartenstein last year, where he sets that high screen, rolls off of it, and then he's catching right around the free throw line, like top of the key, and he's looking to move it. Like, that product is super fun to watch. That ball movement is very enjoyable. And so it's not exactly what it once was, but you want to see some of that defense. You want to see good ball movement and good basketball. TNT tomorrow night, Oklahoma City's on at 7:30. I mean, they're playing Orlando, tough defensive team, but tune in, have some fun.
I couldn't agree more, man. And I know, obviously, I'm just sounding like an NBA mouthpiece at this point, but I'm going to try to wrap this up, and I'm going to try to be fair here too, and put this thing with a little bit of a bow on it. Right now, with the NBA ratings issue, there are so many factors that go into it. We've covered them all. We've touched on them all. But really quickly, let's reiterate them again. People are upset about a number of three-pointers. Some people complain about a defense problem or the lack thereof. We didn't talk enough about the late game timeouts, commercial breaks, and how 2 minutes of game time takes 30 minutes. Those are problems. Those things are fixable. I also don't think those things are as big of problems as people are making them out to be. To me, the crux of the NBA ratings issue right now, and the lack of emphasis on this league in our lives, and lack of love for this league in our lives right now, is broken down by 2 things. First off, we live in an era where attention is at an absolute high, expensive number. You need to put out a crazy performance, a crazy product to truly capture the eyes of everybody. That's something that's really difficult for the entire world right now. We're all dealing with it in many different ways. Somehow the NFL is continuing to win that battle, but other leagues, like baseball has for the last 10 years, and the NBA is right now, are dealing with this. The NBA is the easiest league to follow without watching. You can get box scores, highlights on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube that give you almost everything that you need to do to know what's happening with star players and the best teams. That's a problem. That's something that I don't know if it's going to fix right now. And the second thing is, for all the Cinderella lovers out there, for all the people who love parody, we need star-studded teams to show up when it matters most. And we need the same characters season to season, like a good TV show, to show up when it matters most. The Celtics, I hate them. If they're in the finals for the next 2 years, it's going to mean something for the larger NBA conversation. With LeBron James, Steph Curry, and Kevin Durant, their time might be done. Someone needs to step up and grab that torch. Can the international guys like Jokic, Giannis, or Luka do it? Or SGA, I'll throw them into that. They need to show up when it matters most. Parody's great. Cinderella stories are great, but they don't do the numbers, and they don't last. We need lasting power in this league. So I'm not above criticism here. There are things that need to happen to make this league hit the ratings where they want to hit. But at the end of the day, they signed the deal. The media rights are paid for. This league's getting paid. It's not going anywhere. And they're going to be just fine. They just need things to work out in a certain way. They need players to be healthy at the right time. Shout out Giannis. And they need to keep playing an athletic, fast-paced, fun style of basketball, which I already think exists in the league, but needs to be put on the biggest stage with consistency. So that's it. That's my bow. That's what I got for it. Cody, do you have any last words on this? Because we went way longer than we planned to, and that's on me.
That's just what happens. So I said it before we started. No, I think you're right. My stance on the end of games is very clear. I think they're getting a little bit better with stoppages, with free throws and whatnot, and that's just as far as the product to watch. And I think more than anything that they are in that in-between. We had Steph, LeBron, and KD. We're looking for the next guy that's going to truly take that torch and run with it, like you said. And it might be guys. I think they really wanted it to be Anthony Edwards. But it might be, a couple, but I think that they can be there as long as those guys, like you mentioned, are healthy when it matters the most. I think there's 3 teams in each conference that are really worth fighting for and saying these 6 teams might be able to win it all. Maybe those things can bring the ratings back up. But they've got my viewership. Thank you, FanDuel, for League Pass for 3 months. I'll handle the rest of the year. And I'll be tuning in tomorrow night to watch the Thunder's nationally televised games. And again, I think if you're saying I hate this league, that's a good team to watch, a young, fun one. And if you like basketball, maybe they can help get you back in.
I keep going back to the old Kings announcer when he would say, if you don't like that, you don't like NBA basketball. And a lot of it comes down to that right now. There are stars who are out of control talented in this league. Out of control. There are teams who play incredibly fun styles of basketball. You're not tapping in, and it's not even your fault. There's a range of factors here. But the criticism that I'm hearing the most is not what I believe is the biggest issue. It's more of a fan issue than it is a product issue, and that doesn't mean the product is flawless. It has flaws. But us as fans, all of us, we have flaws. And we don't seem to care about the NBA right now because the NBA isn't giving to us what we've had at its biggest peaks. Dynasties, absolute undeniable superstars, and that's the ticket to the best NBA. So if you complained about LeBron versus Curry 4 years in a row, remember, that's the highest rated finals we've had in decades. That's what this league needs. NBA talk. Boom. That's enough of it. That was way too long. I apologize in hindsight for everybody for me getting on my soapbox for like 30 minutes there, Cody. I apologize. I did that to you too.
It's the league we love.
It is right. It's the league that you and I definitely love. And I feel like that gives us some sort of credence to talk about it more, right? Like, I get it. Like, you're not tapping in, not you, Cody. Like, you, the listener, perhaps right now, you, the person out there who's criticizing the NBA, you don't care about Nuggets Kings on a Wednesday. Like, you're not supposed to. But when it is Nuggets Mavericks or Thunder Rockets or, Bucks Cavs on ESPN or TNT, that's where they really want you to care. And you don't right now. And I think that's because the big picture. It's not because of little parts of the product. That's my opinion. All right, Cody, we're at 50 minutes already. Let's do a quick NFL talk right here. I had this idea this week in Subway Sports Talk, Pete Kennedy and Cody O'Connor. I had this idea this week, Cody, talking about NFL teams. And obviously we talk about power rankings all the time, right? And we power rank teams. And recently we've put teams on the inner circle of the Super Bowl contendership. We've put teams on the outer circle, bubble teams, all these different things, right? But what if there was a college football playoff ranking style system at a pro level? Like, there was a committee of people who were in charge of choosing the best 8 teams, say, in the NFL, and that was the playoffs, right? Based upon not just record and division and conference, but who this committee, based upon some of the similar stuff that the college football rankings use, if they put that to NFL teams, things like key victories, key losses, strength of schedule, absolute talent and point differential and things of that nature. I find it interesting because we're in a semi-weird spot in the league right now where it's pretty obvious who's making the playoffs right now. There's maybe one spot in each conference up for grabs still. You can argue there's 2, but it really seems like there's kind of just one spot in each conference right now. Like, the Dolphins aren't eliminated, but like they're kind of eliminated, right? We're all kind of on the same page with that. The Bengals aren't eliminated yet, but like they're kind of eliminated. What if there was this strategy, Cody, at the pro level? How would we rank these teams? So I want us to think about those 3 things: strength of schedule and the key wins and losses. And third, just the absolute power of these teams and whether you want to use point differential or other stats for making that argument. I think we could do it. So with that being said, to set the scene, I don't care about conference. I don't care about division. It doesn't have to be one from each. Doesn't have to be any of that. I know that differs a little bit from the college football playoff, but the point is to rank based upon the criteria. So with that being said, Cody, do you think that there is a clear-cut number 1 seed based upon the strength of schedule, the key wins and losses, and the point differential and things of that nature?
No. I think to say clear cut, I would say there is not one team that is the clear cut above all else. Definitely put your money on them. They're winning the Super Bowl team. And the way this is where it gets tricky because it does break down conference to get to that spot, right? But we're not saying it in that way. We're saying like if they play neutral site for whatever reason they're reseeded, I don't think there's one team in particular. I think there's probably three that I look at and say these three teams are right now right around the same level. I could see any of them three winning the Super Bowl. And I guess that's my first tier. I know that's not exactly what you asked, but
Right.
that's kind of how I've got it as I do a quick peek through. So do you want those teams?
Yeah, hit me with those teams because then I'll add what I'm thinking as well as for this exercise.
So I think it's 2 AFC, 1 NFC, and in no particular order, it's the Bills, Chiefs, and the Eagles.
Okay, so not the Detroit Lions.
So if injuries were turned off,
Right.
the Detroit Lions might be potential standalone, but they are getting, decimated. And it's hard to ignore. Like, it's okay, Aiden Hutchinson. Oh, that really hurts. But all right, like they're going to add another guy. And they keep losing and losing. I know they lost a D tackle this week. They lost David Montgomery this week, and which is, again, it's like, oh, well, we still have Jahmyr Gibbs. But we watched got my Giants shirt on the last time they were relevant was when it was Jacobs and Bradshaw doing it together, Jacobs and Derek Ward doing it together, and not that one makes the other. Jahmyr Gibbs is an unbelievable talent, but they sure as hell help each other. The work that David Montgomery does early definitely helps open up things for Jahmyr Gibbs late. So those things matter enough to say, I think Detroit is not quite in that tier anymore. At 12-2, they lose one game, but it's not about the game. It's about the players.
And they would be kind of Florida stated out of it, right? Like that would be how they don't get a look at the 1 seed. I think they'd obviously still be in, right? Like they would be in that top 8, but they wouldn't get a look at the 1 seed or even a top 2 or 3 seed for you. And I would tend to agree because of like when Florida State lost their quarterback, it's like, how are we going to put this team in? They clearly don't, they don't have the same gumption without these people.
Yeah, like if you were going to make the line in that Florida State scenario, right, as an odds maker, you'd go, well, we have to make it based on the fact that the quarterback's not playing, and that changes the entire dynamic of the team. And as much as that may suck, that's the way it goes sometimes.
So off the top of your head, who do you think has the hardest schedule out of those teams that you mentioned? You mentioned the Chiefs, the Eagles, the Bills, and who?
Those three are the teams I mentioned.
Who do you think has had the hardest schedule out of those three?
I would guess the Bills did.
And you would be correct because the Chiefs and the Eagles have, 22nd and 23rd ranked schedule. Yep.
Okay, so it wasn't just Eagles bias. They really did play a relatively weak schedule.
And the Bills have had the 8th most difficult. So that right there would make you lead to say, okay, so the Bills have the worst record out of those three, but perhaps they should be power ranked above all of them.
They beat the Chiefs head-to-head.
Exactly. They beat the Chiefs head-to-head, which comes into play very largely in this. They didn't play the Eagles. They also beat the Lions. Their losses, however, are to the Ravens, who I think would net out decently well.
They got smoked by the Ravens, though, even though that was a while ago.
Right. Smoked by the Ravens. They lost to Houston, and they lost to the Rams in the shootout 2 weeks ago. Like, would the Bills have the argument because of the strength of schedule, because of their win over Kansas City, which is the only win over Kansas City, and if you factor in their losses, do you think they have the best argument for number 1 seed?
Yeah, but as you look at 1 loss Chiefs, 3 loss Bills, there's going to be some angry Chiefs fans in this college football rankings. But they beat them head-to-head. I think that matters. I think when the losses happen matter. I think the Bills, you could say that they're the 1 seed.
Who is, off the top of your head, I don't expect you to have the schedule. Maybe you do have it in front of you. What's the Chiefs' most impressive win this year?
When they blocked the field goal against the who was that? The
Broncos?
The Broncos.
So
the Chiefs' most impressive win on the year.
Right.
I don't even know who I don't know. It probably happened early on in the season.
So they beat the Ravens in week 1. the Ravens in week 1, the Bengals in week 2. They've beaten the Chargers twice, and they beat the Denver weird win. Like their wins, it's like Atlanta, New
Yeah.
Orleans,
Plus,
Vegas, Tampa, Carolina in overtime, Cleveland. Like it's kind of unimpressive, man. It's kind of
yeah,
unimpressive, and it makes me really want to fade the Chiefs in the playoffs.
it makes so much sense until you were like, a default answer, but you go back to, if you bet against Mahomes, you feel stupid when you lose, and that
Yeah.
makes it always so difficult to do, even though logic, eye test, statistics, everything that you see says, well, the Chiefs really haven't been that impressive. But here they are sitting at 13-1.
And I think if you go to the Eagles side of it, their most impressive wins, and see if this is more impressive for you than what the Chiefs have done. They beat Pittsburgh last week. They beat Baltimore more recent in the season. They beat the Rams, who have had the hardest schedule in the NFL this year, which could net out well for them in this conversation. They beat Green Bay all the way back in week 1. They beat the Bengals
Wasn't
pretty
that in
big.
Brazil?
That was in Brazil. So if you
God,
want to throw
that's
that
so
out,
long ago.
I'm fine with throwing that one out. That was a weird one. But the Eagles kind of more impressive than the Chiefs, if you ask me. Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Rams, Bengals as well.
Any of those stick out to you, like as the most impressive of those wins? Because I've got one that comes to mind.
Baltimore, 100%. Baltimore and Pittsburgh, but mostly Baltimore, because Baltimore, for all their flaws in their 8-5 record, their offense has been unbelievable this year, and they held Baltimore to under 20, which, if I'm not mistaken, that has happened like 3 times this year, maybe.
Yeah, that's great. Like, that legitimized their defense, in case anyone was curious, but I was pretty confident that their defense was that good, Vic Fangio being there and the talent that they have. I was so impressed with how they beat Pittsburgh, the fact that they were able to move the ball as well as they did, the fact that Saquon didn't even have the big Saquon game, and how they ended that game, ball on the 3-yard line with 10 and a half minutes to go, and the Steelers never saw it again. And that's what the Eagles were 2 years ago when they went to the Super Bowl. Those are the things, defense and run game, they travel in the playoffs. Like, I don't love to say it, but you have to put your bias aside. And if I'm trying to place a bet, say, and I just want to be as clear and level-headed as, I'm just trying to make money off of this. I don't know how you can not say that the Eagles are the best bet to win the Super Bowl right now, especially given the pathway that they're going to have.
I am with you. I think if I had to rank this right now, like with this ranking system that we're trying to figure out, I might put Philly number 1.
I think I talked myself into that too.
Yeah, Buffalo 2, Kansas City 3, and Detroit 4. But hear me out.
Okay.
The Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah.
The Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions, Cody, have the same record.
Talk to me, Pete.
Holy smokes. What is up with that? So Minnesota, on their strength of schedule, is just above. So they're ranked 19th on strength of schedule. So a harder schedule than the Chiefs and the Eagles. A much easier schedule than the Lions, which would lead you to pretty much easily put the Lions above, except for the current state of no Montgomery and 8 players on their defense being injured. Do the Vikings have an argument to be in the top 4 over Detroit? Because I think 1, 2, 3 we're pretty much aligned on.
They're rolling again too, and they have the argument now, but they have the opportunity at the end of the year to steal this division from them. And something I've watched closely, because I have multiple Detroit Lions to win the North bets. One just paired with the Chiefs. One was paired with the Chiefs, Texans, and the Bills. The other 3 already hit. I've already hedged since before the Monday night game against the Bears with the Vikings. They were plus 350. I am terrified of what they can do, and to add all the injuries in, I think the Vikings might steal this division. And how many times, I bet never, has a team won 11 straight regular season games and not even won their own division? I think 10 or 11 games Detroit won. I mean, how crazy is that? Again, I'm thinking of it just like myself as I'm watching them win week after week, and I'm like, the team that I have to sweat the most to win their division is a 12-1 Detroit Lions team, at the time before they lost this week. Like, that's how good the Vikings have been, is they've literally flown under the radar at 12-2. and they have both sides of the ball. They have likely the coach of the year. I think that's a good ticket to take, Kevin O'Connell. I think you get plus money. The quarterback whisperer, defense playing unbelievable, and it's like, shoot, they're not going away. We kept thinking early on. I kept being wrong about this team. There's no way they're this good. Easily the worst take I had in the preseason was writing them off, and Sam Darnold is writing back for him and Geno Smith right now. And it's impossible to ignore.
Yeah, I think you end up giving it to the Lions because the Lions beat Minnesota head to head, but
for now,
they play each other in Week 18, and that's a damn exciting game. So,
dude, they got weapons too. Jordan Addison has come around.
He's been
fantasy player. I mean, he's been huge for me. Instrumental in moving on to the second round as a flex spot guy. He's a stud. JJ, Aaron Jones fits. I mean, and TJ Hawkinson had a game. I was like, holy crap, that guy plays for them too. That's right. Yeah, he plays football.
Right now, in the last 3 weeks for Detroit, Chicago, San Francisco, and then Minnesota. For Minnesota, Seattle, Green Bay, Detroit.
Yeah.
Wow. Tough games for Minnesota and no gimmies for Detroit. I mean, the Bears have not been very good, but San Francisco is not going to be a gimme. And obviously the Minnesota game there, I think you give it to Minnesota. I'm sorry, you give it to Detroit for 4. Are you comfortable slotting Minnesota to 5? Do you think the Packers have an argument? Do you think any of the other AFC teams have an argument in this conversation? Like maybe the Steelers enter the conversation or the Ravens enter the conversation here.
I think both of them enter the conversation, and I still have the lean of Ravens over Steelers. Actually, I wouldn't even say still. I feel like I've gone back and forth as much as you could possibly go back and forth. Like when the Ravens, when the Steelers beat the Bengals the way they did, I was like, holy crap, they can win this way. And then obviously they got pounced by the Eagles, and they're like, oh, like that's the fear that we had. But there was also a fumble in that game when they were driving, some weird stuff. So it's not fully like anti-Steelers, but I've been very, very flip-floppy with them. But I think I would take, God, that's hard. I think I would take the Ravens over the Steelers and the Vikings right now.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
See, I think the Ravens would lose out too much good grace because their toughest games this year.
Well, all right, hold on. I'm sorry. This is where I'm making mistakes, though. I'm trying to project what I would take, like, if they played head-to-head.
Right.
Not doing enough of, like, what they've done, what they've accomplished to this point. I know what I'm doing right now is projecting forward.
Right. I see what you're saying. I think that's obviously a great argument, but for the purpose of this exercise, yeah, I don't think you could rank them above Pittsburgh unless they go ahead and beat Pittsburgh this week. Like they'd have to beat Pittsburgh this week because they play each other, Baltimore and Pittsburgh on Saturday.
Yes.
Like that has to be a win for Baltimore to rank above them in this thing. And obviously for them to win the division, they have to do that too.
They are favored though. Yeah. Right? I mean, aren't they like a heavy? I think I saw 6 points. I hope I was wrong about that.
They do tend to work out in a certain way here, but I would put the Packers above, man. I would. The Packers have had an incredibly difficult schedule. I've been a little bit of a Packers hater, but they have some major wins. They smoked San Francisco, obviously, when San Francisco wasn't at their full strength, but they crushed them. They debilitated Seattle in Seattle. That's a huge win. They beat the Rams earlier this year, which is turning out to look like a fantastic win. And they've just taken care of business and competed even in some of their losses with quarterback injuries. I think that's a nice feather in their cap as well. They got an easy road, though, the rest of the way, except for Minnesota. They got New Orleans, Minnesota, and Chicago. So I don't know. I think you could put Minnesota above, and then I would do a toss-up for Pittsburgh and Green Bay, and then Baltimore. And that's 7 teams. I mean, granted, there's, 14 teams that make the playoffs in the NFL nowadays?
All right. I think I've got the last...
Hit me with your last thing here.
All right, I see 4 teams for that last spot.
We can make it 10 if you want. I don't know. Well, this is a made-up argument, made-up exercise.
Right. So for that, let's say it's 8, and then we'll probably still end up expanding. But the teams I see are Houston, LA Rams.
Mm-hmm.
I think you got to keep the rest of the West out. I think the Commanders at 9 and 5 have the right to be talked about here, even though I would put them at the bottom of it. And then it's got to be the Bucs, right, with how impressive they've looked? Or are you Chargers? Are they in that conversation?
I think the conversation would go between the Rams, the Texans, and the Chargers.
Not the Bucs after they just demolished the Chargers?
Oh yeah, and sorry, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I
Okay.
think that the Buccaneers are right there as well. But the Rams, I just mentioned before, and the Seahawks as well. Sorry, the Seahawks have to be in this conversation too. The
Okay.
Rams have the hardest schedule so far this year, and in totality, the Seahawks have the third most difficult schedule, and the Bucks are 11th. You have to go pretty far down. The Chargers are 26th in strength of schedule. The Commanders have had the second easiest schedule in the NFL this year. I think that comes into play.
Yeah,
If you
they're
think
out of
about
that. The
if you
Commanders, right?
yeah, if you think about who Washington has beaten this year, it hasn't been that impressive. They've
That's because there's
beaten
so many bad teams.
the Giants twice. The Bengals looked like an amazing win, not that great. The Cardinals was a great win for them before the Cardinals kind of took stride. The Browns, the Panthers, the Bears, the Giants again. They lost 3 in a row to Steelers, Eagles, Cowboys, and then beat Titans and Saints. Like, where is the
Barely.
incredibly impressive win for Washington?
Yeah. No, you're right. And again, the way I'm doing this, they are out of that one. Seahawks would be above them in this, right? So if we expanded to 10, the Chargers would be above the Commanders.
I think so. Yeah, I do.
I think so too, but I do think that they're starting to look different now that they don't have J.K. Dobbins, and they're
Right.
struggling a little bit more to run the football, and that was what they really wanted their identity to be. And I wonder if they have a little bit of an identity crisis right now going on because of how difficult it is to run the ball over there. So I'm worried about the Chargers. I'll say that.
I think the Ram argument is simple. They lost some stupid games. They got crushed by the Cardinals early in the year. They lost to the Lions, which is not a bad loss. They lost to the Bears, which really sucked, and they lost to the Packers, who are a great team. They also lost a dumb one to the Dolphins, I guess, too. But they have beaten the Niners twice, which the committee loves. They just told me. They've they've beaten the Vikings, and they've beaten the Seahawks, and they've beaten the Bills. Those are some marquee victories for Matt Stafford and the Rams. Marquee.
And they're hot right now, right? I mean, what have they won? 3 in a row?
No. Yes, 3 in a row before the Eagles game a couple weeks ago. They got Jets, Cardinals, Seahawks. So like they
It's
can
right there.
F around and win 11 games.
Yeah, they can. They can also be 8 and 9, and I don't think that would completely shock me.
The Jets still put up a fight, you think? I think they do. I think they're going to be so dumb and just like play good and win.
I don't think I touched that game. I mean, I have I have a future on everything, but I have a Rams to make the playoffs future, so I'm just kind of able to watch them and root for them, and kind of it's essentially it's not a only division, but it's almost only division with the way that the NFC West has played, and I guess they could chase down the Commanders, but realistically, if they don't win their division, what did that mean their record was down the stretch to even be able to chase down Washington outside of them losing 3 straight? So that division is so fascinating. I think if you had to project that division, not part of the exercise, but do you say Rams win it?
Yes, I do. I think
Who
they
do
do.
the Seahawks have last couple? They have a tough schedule too, no?
Vikings, Bears, and then Rams last week. So we're looking at last week of the year, like just one of those weeks where it's divisions are on the line, left and right, playoff spots are on the line.
This is why the futures are the best, though. Like, in all seriousness, I know I always say this, but when it gets down to this time and you've got you don't have to place anything, even though I still will. You don't have to, because so much is coming down to it where, like, there was a game, the Rams and the Saints a couple weeks ago was like huge for me because I had Saints under 7.5 wins and Rams to make the playoffs. So it was like a massive game, and I'm like texting my buddy like, Rams and Saints is big today. He's a Saints fan. He's like, nobody is saying that. Like, why are you saying that's a big game?
No, it happens at the end of the year. I feel you. All my division parlays are cooked anyway. I had the Cowboys in all of them, so I'm dumb.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, big dumb idiot over here. The Seahawks only win against a team that's currently above 500 is against Denver in week 1.
And so they have, what'd you say it was, Vikings, Bears, and then Rams?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like
the Seahawks wins are not good
chalking
enough.
up a loss to the Vikings, right?
I think so. I mean, the Seahawks can beat the Vikings. The Seahawks can beat the Vikings.
You want to guess the line?
It's in Seattle.
Vikings minus 4.5.
Currently,
I think I'm wrong.
It's just 3.
Yeah, I thought it was a little lower.
Like the
3?
Seahawks can win that game.
I would take the Vikings.
I know. We'll see the picks. So yeah, this is interesting. I think if you break it down, that first 4, Buffalo and Philly 1-2, however you want it. KC is my 3 because of their lack of impressive wins. Detroit, I'll give them 4. Minnesota 5, and then you're looking at like Pittsburgh 6, Baltimore 7, which maybe we're giving too much credence to Baltimore. Their wins aren't that impressive. Green Bay, it's freaking nuts. It's kind of nuts to try to do it like that, to try to figure out who has been the most impressive with their records, because the divisions and the wild cards with the extra wild card spot almost make it not as intriguing and exciting, because it's like every team we just talked about is making the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like every team is making the playoffs, except the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, the West is going to come down to it, but yeah, the rest of them are just playoff teams. Like you don't even mention Houston; they're just wildly unimpressive.
Yeah, Denver we didn't mention, even though they're 9-5.
Yeah, Denver is a great story and a good football team too. Just you can't expect them to make this big a leap. I think right away is probably their thing. But yeah. I looked up real quick what the odds are for the Super Bowl, and I mean essentially it's saying similar. Do you know who the odds-on favorite is right now?
I'm gonna say Buffalo's the odds-on favorite.
It is, which I'm surprised by. I'm surprised it's not Philly. It's them. Philly's next, and then Detroit, and then KC.
Wow.
I mean, plus 550 Kansas City, it's scream and take me.
It's the type of thing that I'm going to go on this podcast every week and say they're going to blow it and then bet them to win it just in case.
Well, we did it last year. I mean, I know I fell victim to it a couple times in the playoffs betting against them until finally in the Super Bowl. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I did too. And I was like, dude, what are you doing? Just please bet the Chiefs and do yourself a favor.
Well, they suck because they don't cover any spreads either.
That's exactly what they did that last year too.
They're not. They say good teams win, great teams cover.
Right
there, proof in the pudding. Chiefs can't cover a spread, save their lives.
They don't. Yeah. Favored by 3.5 this weekend.
Oh man! All right. Well, this has been good. It's a fun way to think about it. I think the strength of schedule, the key wins, the head-to-heads, and all that stuff is just fun and helps us kind of rationalize who we like a lot going into the playoffs versus who is a flash in the pan or who has just a puncher's chance at best. So that was good. Last thing, Cody, because we're going to say goodbye in just a moment here. It's Christmas next week to all who celebrate. And it's also Hanukkah next week, same day. Start of Hanukkah is the same as Christmas Day. What's on your wish list for the Mets this year, Cody? What's the Mets wish list for Cody O'Connor?
Well, for starters, I want 2 starting arms, whether that's a Sean Manaea, hopefully Sasaki. That would be really sick. I know they have a chance at him, and I think that has mostly something to do with Jeremy Hefner and the staff. Which when all the Yankees fans out there go, your number 2 is Clay Holmes, like you're not, all that jazz. It's like, all right, but, for now, 1, and for second, we all laughed, us included, when it was Sean Manaea and Luis Severino last year, and look how that turned out. So maybe there's something in there, Mets fans, in that development and ability to get the best out of guys. But I two starters, I think, at somewhat of the bare minimum. Obviously, they've got to shore up the bullpen. And I don't know how you feel, Pete. I'd really like to get your opinion. But I am so torn, and I think I lean on the side of I do want Pete Alonso back. And there's so many reasons and aspects, and a big part of it beyond just the fact that we've watched him and what he did in the playoffs and what it would mean to be a lifelong Met and what message it sends to your team when it's like, hey, this is what he became out of our system, and now we're going to reward him. I think that's all huge. But if you genuinely go down and look at the baseball aspect of it, and you look at who's going to be the replacement and who's available, and the fact that you just made this major investment in Juan Soto, and part of that investment definitely is you saying, we're not done, we're going to go for it, we want to win. I think your best bet is to have Pete Alonso, who in his really, really bad year still hit 34 homers, still is around 100 RBIs, still is around an 800 OPS. And when it came down to it in the playoffs, it wasn't just that home run against Milwaukee. He had home runs against Philly. He had the home run in Game 5 to extend that series against the Dodgers to start that game off. He was huge. I think adding Soto can take some pressure that he probably put on himself off with the contract being a part of it. So even more than I guess I lean, I fully now have talked myself into I do want Pete Alonso back. I hope he's a part of the Mets going forward. I do think that they will get that done. I really do believe he will be a Met, all said and done. But it might be a waiting game. Oh,
I
and
think,
Bregman would be pretty cool too, but I didn't, both of
yeah,
them would be a lot.
Bregman's the throw in at the bottom of your Christmas list. And I think if you really think about it, like a Christmas list is funny too, because every kid's different, right? So there was always some kids who had a list of like, 30 things and they were just hoping for some of them, right? Then there were some kids who just had like one thing that they wanted and like they knew how their family operated. Right? You get one big gift, then you get like some socks and a pair of jeans and whatever. Every family's different, right? But for me with this Christmas for the Mets right now, I have two marquee items, and I feel like I need one of them. One of those items is Pete Alonso. I want him back. My flag's down. I want Pete Alonso to be on this Mets team. I think for many reasons. One, he's been here for this entire come up. He's been a massive part of the success of the come up, including last year on a down year. He also fits this lineup. He fits it. To have a big bopper who can hit nukes the way Pete Alonso can, and to assume he gets to the back of his baseball card at some point in the next year, that lineup of Lindor, Soto, Alonso, with whoever else is in the midst, if it's Vientos or Nimmo or whoever it may be, is legitimate. He adds legitimacy to this lineup, and the first base thing is fine. I'm fine with it. I don't care about the defense. I don't think he's that bad. I think he's pretty good in some ways. So I want him. I'm not saying no. I'm not going to be one of these fans that if we don't sign him, will say, well, actually, Christian Walker's 80%, and this backup third baseman we just got is going to be pretty decent on the base paths. Like, that's stupid. I want the guy who's going to have a bad year and hit 35 home runs and have a good year and hit 50. That's who Pete Alonso is. On top of him being, if he's a lifelong Met, he is a legend. He is a possible Hall of Famer. He is an all-time leader in all the major statistics in Mets history until Juan Soto passes them in year 12. But Pete Alonso is absolutely on the top of my list. And then the other marquee talent that I put underneath Pete Alonso, because if my parents maybe had a great year this year and saved up really nicely, you go get Roki Sasaki. But I'm not expecting it. That's like when you put, the PS5 and the Nintendo Switch on the Christmas list, expecting to get one of them. And if you got two, holy crap, mom and dad, this is the best Christmas ever. So Uncle Stevie might have to come in and pay for one of those bad boys. But those are number one, number two. If you can't get Roki Sasaki, then you just need some nice games for that PS5, right? So that's where you get the number 2 level starters, number 3 level starters, like those types of pieces, the marginals, and maybe you get a couple extra of them. So instead of the Switch and the PS5, you get the PS5 and 4 games instead of 1 game for each system or something like that. I don't know if this is making any sense on the analogy here. But then the Manayas, the more marginal lineup pieces, the other, rotational pitchers that you can get. That's the way I'm looking at this Christmas, Cody.
Yeah, I like the list analogy. I actually love it because that's exactly how it goes. Like you write down 2 to 3 big ones, knowing if I get one, that's great. And for me, it's like talking to my brothers, like, which one did you do? All right, I'm going to do this one. Like, so that way we kind of get all these, bases covered. We all, there was like a point in time, Pete, where I would just write down like my favorite NFL players, and there would be a list of like 10 guys. It'd be like Eli Manning and Peyton Manning, Tiki Barber and Rondé Barber. I want Reggie Bush. I want Mike Vick. I want, give me Chad Johnson this year too. I just have that list and be like, how come I didn't get all 11 of those jerseys, Santa? Like, what was that about? But
yeah, Santa's a real piece of shit.
We're not going to get everything. I do. Who I really hope comes back, and again, I think will, is Jose Iglesias. I would love to have.
He's kind of a stocking stuffer. Like, he's affordable.
He's like, yeah. Like, you've opened up everything. He's exactly that. But you found like something beyond socks and deodorant in your stocking. You're like, holy crap! Like I don't know, a Switch. I don't know what kids like, but something small that fits into a stocking. Those, it's like, wow, like I can't believe you fit this movie in here or whatever. So I hope they do get Iglesias. I don't think Winker will be back, but I will always love the time when he was against us. It was like the funnest but the worst, and to see him turn that into what he turned it into with the Mets was amazing. But and I would love to have him back. I like his style. I like how hard of an out he is, his eye and his approach. But I don't see that he fits with the amount of outfielders they already have and whatnot. But I would love to see Iglesias back because there's still like some more than some. I think there's a decent amount of uncertainty of like who's going to be that starting second baseman. But I'd love to have that guy in the mix as veteran help, as depth. And if you're going young, I'd love to have him be able to help kind of those young guys flourish.
Is there any conversations of, we don't need to take you out to dinner for Christmas. We got food at home, right? Like with Mauricio and Luis Angel Acuna and Brett Beatty and Stote.
Brandon Sproat, yeah. The pitcher, though. He's a pitcher.
Yeah. No, I know. But I'm saying with any of those guys, is there any feeling of, hey, you know what? We're not going to go get Alex Bregman. We're not going to go grab an extra not superstar, but star level pitcher because we think we have what it takes right now. Like it's in the organization already and some of it's ready to go.
I think those guys have real chances, and some of them to make impacts like Angel Acuna right away. I think you could see Drew Gilbert in center field at some point this year, but I think that's why a guy like Jose Iglesias is so important because it's like insurance, and it's probably cheap insurance at that. And that he can play here. I think he had one of the best years of his career, maybe the best in a long time, probably since his 2015 All-Star appearance. So having that insurance policy to say, if God forbid the 3 weeks from Luis Angel Acuna wasn't who he is, and we can't rely on him, and we can't rely on Ronnie Mauricio, who I don't think we can because of the injury, and I think he's going to take a lot of time to work his way back. That's why I want that insurance. And maybe the insurance is Jeff McNeil. Maybe it's Jose Iglesias.
Second base.
Those are all possibilities. They have those guys, but I don't think they'll rely solely, right, like on those guys completely developing, even though Luis Angel Acuna is killing whatever Venezuelan baseball he's playing right now.
All right, what about the Yankees? If you were a Yankee fan, what would be on your wish list? Remaining, obviously. They got Fried and they got Bellinger, but they feel like there's more to do.
I would not even want – I would say Alex Bregman almost ties the bow on their offseason because
really
they have done a nice – not like it's completely done. They will still make moves, but I think he's the last big piece that you would see them add. Like they've made their – Max Fried was huge. Devin Williams, huge. And Cody Bellinger is a sort of project, but like he has really good potential. Obviously, he can be, and he's versatile. He could be
so
first
weird to call him a project, though. He's been in our lives for so long. I know,
but he's like he sucked last year, but he was really good the year before that,
and then he sucked the year before that, and then won an MVP the year before that.
So up and down. So project might not be it, but risk, I guess, is like he's like a calculated risk is probably the better way to put it.
Yeah.
But I think if you see Bregman go there, he shores up third base. They're able to move Jazz Chisholm to second. Doesn't seem like Glaber's coming back, but
who plays first? Do they have to get Walker, though? Does it have to be a Walker level? Like, who's after Walker that's going to play first base for them now? Is Ben Rice coming back out here?
Well, I don't know if they believe in Ben Rice. I don't know if they want to have...
I don't think they should. I don't think he's that good.
You think Cody Bellinger does just play center field, or does he play first base for them?
Then you put Belly at first, and Dominguez plays center, and you hope that works.
Yeah, like they have, I guess, two young guy options, and I don't know that they're solely going to bank on one. I could see them going and getting a Harrison Bader-like player and having that be center field or another
Yankee fans would
option.
love if they bring back Verdugo, I'm sure.
They'll love Harrison Bader. I mean, I think they like him, but they'll like call it. They always say how Mets get Yankee scraps, like as if it doesn't go back and forth. I always love seeing that. They're like, the Mets love Yankee scraps. It's like J.D. Davis batted cleanup last year. Like, what are you talking about? They're so funny with that. But I think if they got Bregman, that's one of the last big moves, and they'll be really happy, and they'll say the pivot was good. And I do give them credit for at least pivoting. And I think if nothing else from this whole Soto thing, maybe it did light a little bit of a fire under Cashman's ass. And it's like, like we really aren't just like we can't just rely on the name the Yankees anymore. So
Right.
maybe that is a positive. That'd be
And
my spin zone.
I think it's a great spin zone. I think from the get-go of losing Juan Soto, the Yankees had a great path to success. It was just never going to be as simple as fans made it seem. Oh, all we have to do is go sign, instead of the number one free agent, we have to sign 5 of the top 7 free agents and we'll be perfectly fine. It's like, that's not how it works. Like, oh, but if we just trade for Tucker, get Fried, get Bregman, get Santander, get Pete Alonso and Bellinger, we're great. It's like, no, well, you're not going to get all 6 of them. Like, you're going to hope to get 3. Like, we go back to the Christmas list concept again. You already knocked off 2 nice pieces of the Christmas list. Like, Santa came early and got you Max Fried and Cody Bellinger. And I think they need one more, PS5 level item on this list. I think the Yankees are looking for that. It's like they were looking for, season ticket. Well, that's a bad analogy because we're talking about sports, but I'm talking like $1,000 gift with Juan Soto here, like 2 PS5s. I don't know what's equivalent to that in today's day and age, but like a gaming computer. That's Juan Soto, like a 3,000 gaming computer. Now you're gonna get a PS5. You still need one more big marquee gift, in my opinion, with the Yankees thing. I don't know if like Santander and Walker is gonna equal one more big gift. Is like Pete Alonso on the Yankees list that high? Is that gonna move the needle for Yankee fans? Like, is that gonna be a happy unwrapping on Christmas morning?
I would think so. I think there's certainly Yankees fans out there that would just be like, "Ha! Like now we got your guy," and like that
Right.
spite might be enough.
Yeah.
I think Bregman is just the better fit because there's not void, but you can move Jazz Chisholm to a little bit of a more comfortable spot. You've got a great defensive third baseman in Bregman, a guy that can hit for power, but he also has a good eye. He's a tough out. He lengthens your lineup a ton. Like I think he makes more sense. I think they'd be happy with Pete. I think you should be happy with Pete if I was them, but personally, I just don't think he's going there. I maybe that's my Mets bias. Usually, it doesn't come out in that way, but I don't think that Alonso's going to go there. So I think that they're looking at a Christian Walker or an Alex Bregman, and I think they get one of those or Santander. I do think they get one more of those guys, or at least that they should.
All I know is that in this Christmas season, the Yankees deserve, an incredible round of applause for the work that they've put in on the pads this year. The mental gymnastics that they've been putting on display over the last few weeks are just a beauty to watch. It's impressive. It is the sports that we love, right? It's when fans can pivot that quickly. It is just impressive. I love to see it. I'm very proud of the Yankee fans for the gymnastics in their heads that they're putting themselves through.
I imagine it comes through with the fan too, but what I've seen on my Twitter has like driven me crazy.
Oh, dude, don't get me started.
It really like would be a whole nother podcast because I have enough on that where it's like he's
And Met
all of
fans
a
are
sudden
annoying
wants-
too. Like, let's be real.
of course, because the thing that I can't stand, and I've said this before, is when Mets fans pull this like as if we've already won something or accomplished anything by getting Soto, and we're now Big Brother. I hate the term. I never liked it. It's not the case either, right? You have to win something. Like in order for that to be the case, if the Mets beat the Yankees in the World Series, that's one way that maybe you can start to shift that. That's almost it. Other than that, it starts at multiple championships. So I hate
Yeah,
when Mets fans do that. But
100%.
you,
The
you
path for the Mets to make the playoffs is still really freaking hard.
it's so hard. There's
Just the
every
playoffs.
dude, every world in which it doesn't exactly work. Like it's a very real possibility. So
Yeah.
my whole thing with getting Soto was I get to watch this guy in a Mets uniform for the rest of his career. I've loved him since he was a national. I wanted him since the day that it was available. I know Evan Roberts talked about it from the moment that it happened. He was like, I hope they don't trade for him, but 2 years down the line and in free agency, I hope they go get him. That was well before anything with the Yankees. So I think Mets fans have felt that way and for a long time and they finally, we finally got to get him. But the turn on this guy as if he's just an okay player or that Kyle Tucker is to the same level or his defense is somehow a liability, even though it's not great. He was a Gold Glove nominee. It's not like
Which is hilarious, but yes.
I know, but it's not like he's an atrocious defender either. Like, it's crazy how they've turned into we almost never wanted him. Just like the good Yankees fans, I got plenty of them in my life who were just more like,
Yep.
congratulations, like he's amazing, like I'm so happy for you, but I'm so pissed for me. Like, thank you for like just being a man about it and just being like, damn, we lost him. That sucks. We'll be okay because we're the Yankees and we'll pivot, but it still sucks. Can I hear that it still sucks, please? Because it does.
Yeah, 100%. And right now, put this out there: if the Yankees do sign Pete Alonso, and unless you're a Mets fan who's already been a Pete hater, because those do exist, if you've been a Pete hater, then go ahead and say good riddance. But if you love Pete and you've been, touting his talents for the past couple of years now, don't turn around and be like, yo, wait till you see his range at first. Like,
wait till he tries to start a double play.
Yeah, watch him go too far and then make a bad toss to the pitcher. You're gonna love this guy. Like, please don't do it, Mets fans. Don't do that because
it will come.
Oh,
it would.
His batting average was actually only 217 last year. Like, all right, come on. If we signed him, we'll be like, we got Pete back. Like, don't do what they just did with Soto. Be bigger.
It would hurt worse too, right? Pete being a lifelong Met, not just the 1 year. Like that's
100%.
I think that's a little like it would be like if they went after Judge hard 2 years ago. Like that's completely different than Soto.
And if people say, "Oh, this guy Soto's got no loyalty," it's like, what, for 1 year? Like, how much loyalty was he supposed to build up? Because the fans cheered for the best hitter, top 3 hitter in baseball. He's supposed to have undoubted loyalty. Come on,
I know.
Pete Alonso. If he leaves to the Yankees, like, then that's a loyalty question. He's come through the Mets organization, but if the Mets don't offer as much as the Yankees, then you can't question Pete's loyalty. Like, it has to be close, just like the Yankees thing was close with Soto. So I don't know.
Yeah, I could go all day on that, but I think we should.
An hour and 36 minutes. How about it? That's what we do around these parts, Cody O. Code name, me and you talk for days. That's not good. I don't know. Whatever. It's getting late.
We'll workshop it.
We'll workshop it. This was great. Intern, the NBA overall is fine. They have some things that they need to go right this year. But the ratings ain't changing nothing. The deals are signed. They're inked with all the media networks they need to be inked with. They're going to get just as much money as they need to keep this league going. They just need some things to work out right to get the non-hardos, which maybe is that a nicer way to say casual? The non-hardos?
I don't know if that. I think it's less insulting. Yes, I think casual. When you hear it, you're like,
right? Casual. The connotation of like you don't know anything and you're an idiot. Even though
that's exactly what it is. You're a casual is such an insult.
Yeah, like it shouldn't mean that because it just means like you're just not like, insane about it. Like you're not
It's
nuts.
like you have a life and you probably aren't like revolving around watching.
I'm a casual MLB fan. I'm a hardcore Mets fan and a Yankees observer. Right?
I would say the same about
none of those
myself,
things
too.
are insults, like to me. But if someone says, yo, you're a casual, you don't know ball. Kyle Tucker's just as good as Soto. I'm like, casual doesn't seem like it checks out there. So maybe non-hardo. Non-hardo sounds good to me. To my non-NBA hardo fans out there, give the Thunder a try. How about that?
Yeah, there you go. To the NBA normies. See you tomorrow night.
All right. Subway Sports Talk, Cody O'Connor. Thank you as always, my friend. Subway Sports Talk on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, all the places that you get your podcast and your social medias. We're there. We appreciate you all for listening a ton. Also on Radio Garden State on Friday mornings at 9 a.m. Shout out to y'all. We'll talk to you next week. Cheers.